So anyways, back to our blockout. I'm going to go out of solo mode. I'm going to Alt-tap the blockout I was working on. Well, actually, I'll Alt-tap this one, turn it off, Alt-tap my blockout, and now I'm back to where I started. So with my clay buildup brush, I'm going to hold down Alt and just kind of start shaving that down a little bit. I'm going to go into my clay brush. If you don't, and that was actually clay tubes. I say clay buildup because it's assigned to Alt B, but it's actually clay tubes. Clay tubes or clay buildup will give you both pretty good results, as well as just the clay brush. You can go in here and kind of start building this up. You can use your standard brush. I'm going to go crank up the intensity on my standard brush just a bit. I'm going to go into stroke, lazy mouse, and you're going to see lazy mouse is on with a radius of 1, so it kind of evens out your stroke just a little bit. What I'm going to do is crank that up so I have a really obvious lazy mouse, and then I'm going to hit L on my keyboard, which is going to toggle lazy mouse on and off. So I'm going to toggle that off so I know that when I'm using the standard brush it's off. If I hit L and it's back on, it's really obvious with my standard brush. So then I can go through here and start dictating where I want my details to go, so I can start digging those in. Again, if I want my lazy mouse on, I can just hit L and toggle that back on. So I can start cutting in. You know, if I want some padding up top here, I can go ahead and start cutting that in. I'm going to crank that intensity up just a little bit more. But before I get too involved with the detail, I want to make sure my overall boot shape is correct. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of fatten these ankles up. You don't see a lot of tapered ankle boots on these combat dudes. I mean, I guess you can, but that's not really the look I'm going for. I want something more, a little bit more tree trunky. And then I'm going to go to the side here and kind of pull this up. And I'm going to round this out like maybe it's got a little bit of a steel toe in there to kind of protect his little toes. And then if you look at a boot from the front, it kind of has a leaning effect, which is actually the opposite of what I want. I want it to be big over here and small over here. So the big toe is going to be bigger, and then the small side is going to be smaller. And then again, I can get my clay brush here and kind of round that out. I really don't care about the details on the bottom. If you do want to go ahead and add that in, by all means, go ahead and just mask that out and then do a pattern on there and pull that through if you'd like. But I do know I'm going to be doing that a little bit more precisely later on with one of our techniques. I'm going to go ahead and leave that alone for now. Use my smooth brush to kind of smooth that out. And now I can kind of start blocking in, you know, if I want that big leather thing, I can hold down Control with mask pin and just kind of mask that in. It's going to have two straps that go around to the side here. Like so. I can hold down Control Alt and tap on my mesh to kind of tighten that mask up. And of course your masking options are down here in the masking menu. Most of these things can be controlled with hotkeys, which is what I'm going to be doing, but if you want the manual button, it's in there as well. So Control Alt and Paint to unmask, and then Control Drag to mask. And of course you can Control Drag in your document, hold down Spacebar and move that around to mask squares. So with that masked out, I can go ahead and Control Tap to invert that mask, and that's the same thing as just doing that invert right there. And now I can hit W and go in here and just tap to find a surface normal, hold down Shift, or I don't have to, I can just move it around with my transpose. I can go to the side and transpose that out. And you notice I'm using W and not scale. If I scale, it's going to be a uniform scale, which is not necessarily what I want. I want a non-uniform scale, so I'm actually using W, which is move. And I'm hitting W, it's grabbing move and scale up here. To kind of move those around, I'm going to snap to the side here, kind of move this out, and then go to the side here and kind of move that out. And there we go, Control drag again, and now I've got a shape for that leather part. Smooth that down a little bit. If I want to kind of dig in these details, I can go in with my standard brush here. I'm going to make that lazy radius a little bit smaller, so it's not quite so lazy. I can start digging those details in here, go in with my clay brush, build that up. And even if I want to kind of test out what it's going to look like if I have like little holes in here, I can go ahead and turn off lazy mouse and I just kind of start punching those holes in. Now obviously I'm going really fast for demonstration purposes, but you know, take your time if you need to make this as pretty as it needs to be. And now I can go in here with my move brush, make the brush size big. I'm just tapping S to get my brush size here on my screen. You can also go up here and kind of start moving the stuff around to make it appear more like what you want. And if this is too low, I can just smooth it down, go in with my standard brush and kind of just dig that back in here like so, and smooth that back, grab my clay brush. And I'm using hotkeys here. Obviously the very first part of Intro to ZBrush Part 2 goes over hotkeys, and that's free on the YouTube channel as well, that particular video. And now I can go in here with my standard brush, kind of carve this little area out, and then I can give little indications of where I want my shoelaces to go. So over, under, and when we get to the Z-sphere part, I'm going to go ahead and just carve in some I'm sorry, not carve in, but add some Z-sphere shoelace geometry there. I also know I'm going to need some big old clamps along the side to go ahead and hold the sides of the shoelaces down. So I'm just going to use my clay brush here and just going to just clay brush build up on the side here. And while you're working in the round, if you see anything weird, go ahead and fix it. And a lot of times that's just with your move brush. You can kind of start going through here and kind of fixing anything that looks a little bit awkward. And I also have these little weird things on here. I'm just going to use my clay brush to kind of pop those in. So it's kind of a release latch on here. And you can hold down Alt with your clay brush and kind of dig that in. And then I'm just going to go in with my clay tubes and go, okay, I'll also probably want to strap right around the bottom here. Let's kind of give a strap indication. And I also messed up. This thing needs a heel. So I'm going to go into transparency mode and see where my foot is, and that's fine. So what I'm going to do is hold down Control-Shift, go back to my clip, and I'm going to Control-Shift-Drag, get that little gradient there, Alt-Tap twice, about halfway up, so I get a little heel back here. That's going to give me a sharp transition, and I'm going to Alt-Tap once to get a soft transition. I'm just going to ease that out to the front of the boot, and then Control-Shift again, and I'm just going to kind of tilt the bottom of that boot up. You're going to see in boots, it's going to kind of have a little lift towards the front. I can also go the back here and just clip that straight across. Okay, so now we have a heel shape that starts here and then it kind of dips down and then kind of tilts back up. If you want to, you can also go into your trim dynamic. So B, T, D to select trim dynamic, or you can assign a hotkey and you can go through here and you can actually start trimming your shapes if you need to. If you want to kind of lift up the inside of the boot here, let's go ahead and smooth that down. We can kind of lift up or trim back this inside just a tad. And now with that new shape here, I'm going to go into my standard brush, make sure I have under stroke my lazy mouse turned on with a lazy radius. I have that in my hotkey settings right here. So if I toggle L on and off, you're going to see it toggles the lazy radius on and off. And now I can go through and kind of indicate, holding down Alt, where I want that line to be for the rubber part of my sole. And that's just going to go straight back around here. And obviously the heel's a little bit wonky, so I'm going to go mask this heel part out. So when I cut it straight back from the side, his feet are kind of tilted out, so it didn't give me the result I really wanted. Control-Alt-Tap to sharpen that mask up, Control-Tap out here to invert that, and now I can just move this heel into place, like so. So it'll be more straight across here. Control drag again. Smooth out that Dynamesh, any sort of weird Dynamesh stuff you have going on. You can also go with your H polish and just polish that back up. And now we've got a heel that's a little bit more representative here. We can also H polish the inside here. And then standard brush to re-dig that back in. Now if your boots are getting a little thin on the bottom here, just hold down Control to go into Mask Lasso. Grab the bottom parts of your boots. Control tap to invert, go into your transpose and just pull all of that down at once. Control drag again, and now you got a little bit more boot thickness for you. Go into your H polish, hold down Alt, and just H polish that down. And there's our basic boot shape. I'm going to go back in here with my clay buildup, and now that we have a heel, let's H polish this back a little bit. There we go. So then clay buildup or clay tubes that'll go from here underneath to the front part of the heel there, and then back up and around. So that's really all the information I need for my boot block out as far as where things are going to end up going. Now if I spend a little tiny bit more time, I'm going to go ahead and bring back my original boot here. I'll just continue on from this one. It's got a little bit more of a layout. You're going to see I just use standard brush to kind of indicate where the buckles are. Put a little flap on the back here. Standard brush to kind of dig in where I want this stuff to go. And then even in here it's a little more detailed. Not super detailed, but enough to kind of go off of.